talk and rock radio where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
Hi, everyone. My special guest today is a musician. He's managed A-list bands and artists most of his life. He practices yoga and transcendental meditation. He's a ceramics crafter and an accomplished author of his own memoir. Oh, yes, and he managed to take a little bit of time to walk his dog on a regular basis. Welcome, Rick Levy. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, Rick, how are you? Nice that we finally were able to connect.
Yeah, man.
Know the problems we had today.
Well, yeah, technology is great when it works, but, you know, we got there. That's the main thing.
We did get there.
We didn't even have to ask our kids to help us to do it, you know, so.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I usually start these shows, Rick, talking about the early years. So, you know, you're from Allentown, PA.
Right.
And like many of the artists that I've, you know, interviewed in the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of people from PA moved to Florida. Seems to be the common thing to do. You're down there in St. Augustine, right? Right near the ocean.
Yeah.
So you can walk to the ocean from your house?
Yeah, I can walk. I'm looking out my bedroom window and down the lane. There's a little side street and that goes right down to the beach. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Yeah, very fortunate. I love it here. I've lived here longer than anywhere, including Allentown as a kid.
Wow. So what year did you move down there?
Well, I moved to Florida in 93 and came up here in 98. So it's 24 years already. It's crazy. Almost 25 years. Love it. You know, I play music here. I've got a little ceramic. I got a pottery wheel in my spare bedroom, so I can do a lot of my work here and then take it to a studio to fire. But it's great. Yeah. But Allentown was great too, man. I mean, back in the 60s, Allentown was a great, great city.
Well, it must have been, because I tell you, many of the artists that I've, you know, been talking to are from Allentown, you know, so that name has come up numerous times.
Yeah, well, of course, Jay and the Techniques from Allentown. And that was the first touring group that I worked with. In the 80s, that started me on, Jay started me on this whole, I can't know if I don't divide it in halves or thirds, but the whole section of my life that started in the mid 80s, when I was doing several things. I was raising my son as a single dad. I was teaching school. I already had a degree from University of Pennsylvania, but I went back and got an education degree because I wanted to be home. I didn't want to be traveling a lot. My son was little at the time. The Limits, we had our own label, and I was learning licensing and publishing and stuff, and arranged a license in France, one in England for the Limits. And then I also started, I was called by someone to meet Jay Proctor, the singer with Jay and the Techniques, because he wanted to start performing again more regularly. And I heard him and Lucky, his partner, who they sang together for quite some time. And I was floored at their singing. I just said, man, this is like Sam and Dave and Otis Redding all mixed up in one. And but I said, Jay, you know, the band sucks. You know, you need a band that's worthy of what you're doing. So that just started a whole, and jump in anywhere, because I'll get wordy on this stuff.
Oh, let's jump out of this a minute and go back to the to the early
Early.
group, the Limits. I want to talk
Okay.
about the Limits. In
Yeah.
67, I know there's one song that I really liked, and it's called "Don't Steal My Heart." Talk about the inspiration of that song and when you recorded it and everything, Rick.
Well, okay, that's an interesting thing. That particular song is an original Limit song that was recorded later, not by the '60s group. The original group started in Allentown, late '64, early '65. We were as young as 14 up to maybe 19 in the band, and some of us couldn't drive to the gigs yet. But we were playing all the time. I mean, Lehigh Valley had a lot of great bands, some of which I'm sure you have heard of. I mean, I don't mean on the level of Jay. I mean, garage bands that, gained some notoriety. You had the Shillings, you had King's Ransom, Johnny and the High Keys, but we all played because there were teen nightclubs all over the place, under 21 clubs. So we were playing there. We were playing high school dances, swim parties. We were playing frat parties, and none of us was 21. So it was good. It was a good bunch of years through high school, man. It was my training ground and the formation of some of the real foundational friendships in my life.
And those friendships are very important, man. I know in the 80s, back when you did the reunion of the Limits, is that when you did that song, Don't Steal My Heart?
That was about the era. That's right. We put Bo and I, Bo Jones, who was one of the original Limits, he passed away. There were three Jones brothers, Bo, Rook, and Chris. Rook's the only one remaining, sadly, but happily for Rook, but sadly for the other two. But Bo and I and two other guys put together in about 1980. We kept the name. We wanted to record original stuff that was more technologically up to date than what we had done in the '60s, of course.
Right.
And we wanted it to be original songs. And we started our own label called Luxury Records. And me and Bo, along with Hub Wilson and Pete Smoyer, I think we recorded 3 albums, maybe of some EPs, singles, got some of them released overseas, France, Germany, and almost cracked through, but didn't. And Don't Steal My Heart was from that first Limits album, titled like my book, High in the Mid '60s.
Don't steal my heart tonight. I haven't had it long. I'd gladly give it if you want it, but I miss it when it's gone. I'm afraid to let my feelings fly again. I just couldn't watch you say goodbye till then. Please don't steal my heart tonight. Please don't steal my heart tonight. Don't steal my heart tonight. It won't look good on you. I know that you already have one, but could you want with 2? If you have a love you want to share with me, do I, don't I keep my heart or set it free? Please don't steal my heart tonight. Please don't steal my heart tonight.
Now, did you write that song, Rick?
Actually, Pete Hubbard, the 3 of us did in the band. Yeah. It's got a great feel to it.
It does. And talk about the inspiration of that song.
Well, just, the Limits were always about boy-girl songs. If you listen to that first album, actually the compilation album that now Cleopatra Records in California has. The compilation of all our original later Limit stuff is called Songs About Girls. So they're all about broken hearts and don't steal my heart, or, you help me have a heart, or, haven't you heard, just, happily enough without you. It runs the gamut. It runs the gamut. But it was always, that was just kind of a theme. We weren't very metaphysical. We loved pop music. We loved the 60s pop music, but we wanted to try to update it a little bit. And most people, we have a pretty nice cult following that people like what we do, what we did, I should say.
I know in around 1985, you guys did a cover by Joan Armatrading called Call Me Names.
Yeah. I almost forgot that little era. Yeah,
that
we went
was
to
good.
New York. We went to New York and jumped up to a big 24-track recording. And we did original songs, and we did that one Joan Armatrading song, Call Me Names. I think I've got a YouTube video about somewhere with that song. Really good version, great song to begin with. And that was those sessions were slated for a British label, and the label never got it together. So not a whole lot happened with those songs.
Let's talk a little bit about the transition. You alluded to that a moment ago about moving out of the PA regional bands, going into starting to work with the A-list players, like, Herman's Hermits, Tommy Rowe,
right.
Jay and the Techniques.
Right.
Talk about how that happened and the transition of all that.
Well, 45 years later, whatever it is, however long, none of us thought, every year, none of us think, there's still people who want to hear this stuff, but the early 80s were the first resurgence of 60s music, because those of us who grew up in there were getting into our 40s. And that seems to be about the time that nostalgia thing kicks in. If you notice now, like 80s and 90s music is the new oldies music, because those people are in their 40s now with families and everything, and they want to relive their, it's generally based around their high school time. So I was still living in Allentown with my son, and my parents were also in town and teaching school and had the Limits, and we were going to New York to play and still trying to get that elusive record deal. And I get a call one day, hey, can you come to such and such a place and listen to Jay and Lucky sing? And of course, everybody knew Jay and the Techniques, especially in Allentown and the Lehigh Valley. They put us on the map. And, and I'll say as an aside to the audience, if you never listen to the Jay and the Techniques catalog, you should, because there's a whole lot more than apples, peaches, pumpkin pie. Jay could have been one of the great soul singers, in my opinion.
He could have been another Otis Redding, no doubt.
Yeah, when we you speak of that, when we did Try a Little Tenderness live with the Jay and the Technique show, I mean, there were people crying, there were women swooning. Yeah, so it had that potential. And what it did for me, I was fulfilling another dream, and that was of touring more regularly, and we were going all over the country. I was doing a lot of the booking myself back then. And along the way, we would play shows with a Tommy Rowe, a Tokens, a Freddie Cannon, a Barbara Lewis, a Drifters, a Coasters. And none of these guys, we were most often booked on the show, maybe not even so much because of Jay, but because of the band, we could back everybody on the show, like those old rock and roll reviews. And that's how I met Tommy. And that's how I met, that's actually how I met Peter before he carried his own band. That's right. It was a show, and I remember it now very well, in Baton Rouge. Jay and the Techniques, the Tokens, and Peter Noon. And
now, these backing bands that you had, Rick, were they ones that you put together when you got out to L.A., or did you take them with you?
No. I was never in L.A. No. This was all done in. At this point, I was still living in Allentown.
Okay.
These were all Lehigh Valley musicians. And if anybody says, we didn't have as good musicians as anywhere, they're full of crap. I think every town had great musicians, and but we could learn stuff fast. We did it well, and one thing led to another. If we weren't working with Jay for a few weeks or whatever, Freddie Cannon would call us. Hey, can you come out with me for 2 weeks, or the Tokens or something like that. And we started to do it pretty regularly with Tommy. And that started a relationship that is 20 some years old. He's actually doing his first concert since he retired, which was 5 or 6 years ago. He's playing Thursday night somewhere up in New Jersey.
Tommy cool.
Rowe. Yeah, Tommy Rowe is. And so I was doing that, 85 on, moved to Florida in 93, kept it all going, and we didn't really allude to it. And one of the things I didn't mention, I was also doing this with 3 other guys, a rock and roll assembly program in schools called Rock Roots, the history of American pop music. We went around to elementary and junior high schools in like 100-mile radius. So I was doing all this stuff, and I moved to Florida. I was married at the time. We wanted to get out of the cold weather. It was a great move to Orlando. And toward the end of the 90s, we're in Hong Kong playing a big show. And funnily enough, Peter Noon's on the show again. And he's got his own band this time. And we've played with each other. We've known each other for a while. And some other act is playing, and he catches me in the back of the room. How are you? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, what do you think? I said, well, Peter, you sound great. You're singing. No, this was 98, maybe. Yeah. I said, but I got to tell you, the band, they're great players, but they don't sound like Hermit's music. They're playing it too heavy, man. I said, kill me if you want to. And he said, I know. I said, and I left it with, well, man, if I can ever do anything, if you, whatever, just, you know how to find me. So sure enough, and that's how that's how my life's always been. It's been this like serendipity. And sure enough, a year later, his music director calls me because he can't do a couple of cruises with Peter.
Okay.
And he says, Rick, can you do this? But you have to have a band. So I handpicked guys again from Allentown who absolutely were like 60s music freaks. And They never even met Peter till the curtain opened at the first night of the show. But we rehearsed like hell. It was great. And he's changed. Well, the drummer's still with him that I brought in. But Peter changed bands after about 3 years. But it was a really good, important part of my career. Touring that much, having to handle the business that much and all that kind of stuff. And pretty much right after that, I went back right into doing what I was doing. Doing the package shows with Jay and Freddie Cannon, Barbara Lewis and all that stuff. And then Tommy wanted us to come with him. And I worked with Tommy Rowe for a long time.
So basically, you could say that between Peter and Tommy, that's where you cut your teeth as far as learning the management side.
And I got to give props. I got to give props to Jay, because being that was my first experience. He was a seasoned showman, and I was still a local player. I didn't have the breadth, the width of scope and everything. It's not that you didn't have the ability. It's a different thing when you're out in front of a lot of people, and when you're traveling, when you have to be on time, and it's a different ball of wax. And I got very good at being a tour manager.
And I tell you, it takes a lot of talent, a lot of dedication. There's a lot to doing that, because I've been there and I've done that myself.
Yeah, and in the box tops, when we, funnily enough, I was managing them before I played with them. While Alex Chilton was still alive, I was handling the band and getting them bookings, but I was not playing with them. I was still with Tommy. And then after Alex died, the band did not play at all for 5 years. And then Bill Cunningham and Gary Talley, who you may have on your show, the founding members, and myself, we were all good friends. Because I kept saying, guys, I'm getting calls for the box tops. I'm getting, so we did a couple of rehearsals in Nashville, because that's where several of the guys lived. And, in the few short years we've been at it, we played every major 60s event in the country and out of the country. Happy Together Tour, Flower Power Cruise, Concerts at Sea. We did a TV special in Hamburg, Germany, got inducted into the Memphis Music Hall of Fame in 2018, which is great. Yeah. So now what my time is, because our years are always up and down, we're never going to be an act like a Peter Noone. He's iconic.
Yes.
The Temptations, the Beach Boys, they're iconic as figures. But we'll always play a certain number of dates a year. And, we do like I said, the cruises. We're working on trying to go back and do some more international things. So my time now is managing and tour managing and playing with the box tops. I play locally. I have a duo. We're called the Bones, and we play around St. Augustine. Of course, I do all the box tops business stuff, which would be airline tickets, hotels, taxes, payroll, blah, blah, blah.
So since you've been talking about working with these A-list players.
Some of them are pricks. No, I'm only.
No, we already know that.
Yeah.
They're always there. But talk some about the real standout experiences that you've had, Rick. I mean, the biggest crowds, the biggest place you've ever worked, all of those.
Yeah, and I write about them in the memoir, because there are a few were earth changing, and we'll talk about the book in a minute. But one was not being in a big crowd. One was a small crowd. Me and a keyboard player. Actually, we were playing with Peter Noone in Miami, and we were opening up for James Brown.
Cool.
Here's an odd mix, but
cool.
The afternoon of the show, we did our sound check, and then James comes in with a school bus full of people, literally a school bus full of people, and he's pissed. Now, me and the keyboard player are in the back of the hall. He probably doesn't know anybody's there. He takes them through a 3.5-hour sound check, and he is ripping them a new one. Horns doing this, singers doing this. My friend Steve and I are sitting there realizing we have just gone to school. We have just seen a genius at work, you know, putting this thing that was obviously off kilter back into shape for the show. And the show was amazing that night. It was friggin' amazing. So that was a key one. We were doing a show in the Georgia Dome.
Oh, wow.
Which is no small place.
No.
I don't know how many, 20, 30, 40,000. There was a big station in Atlanta for years called Fox 97, big oldie station, 60 station. So there was a lot of acts on the show, and we were backing several people, Tommy, Jay, Barbara Lewis, Peter was on the show. Jerry Lee Lewis is on the show. So we're out there sound checking our band. And all of a sudden I hear another guitar playing, and I look over, and again, the crowd wasn't here yet. This is why these things were much more meaningful than a big crowd. I look over, and there's James Burton playing along with us, and I freeze. I mean, I stop playing, and he goes, "No, come on, guys, it's good." And we end up for like 15 minutes just jamming blues and with James Burton.
And then you went to his club later, right?
We did. Later, we were playing a casino in Shreveport. And he has a club in Shreveport. That's where he lives. And his son was there. And, it was great, and this is, you make friends with these people who are, legendary. I have that picture of me getting a kiss on my birthday from Priscilla Presley the night the Box Tops got inducted into the Hall of Fame in Memphis, which I think is, to me, a bigger deal than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because the names in the Memphis one are just, they're all iconic. There's
off the chart. Yeah.
There's no filler. And I, it's not me. I am not an original box top, but Gary and Bill were there. John Evans was still there before he passed away. Danny and Alex had already passed, but just the love you felt. And, we felt welcomed as the Box Tops, carrying on the legacy too. And so that was another real moving experience for me. But yeah, playing in the big room, like that thing in Hong Kong I was talking about, thousands of people, done a number of the stadium kind of shows. Now you're just one act with 20 or or something like that, but you have your moment there. You definitely have your moment, and it's pretty heady. It's pretty cool.
That is so cool. Now, this is great experience stuff that you've had here, but I've got to mention one of the biggest moments that had to be really huge for you, Rick, is the Pennsylvania Governor's Lifetime Achievement Award that you got. I mean, in the music industry, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even living there anymore. I had been out of the Lehigh Valley for now 20 years, 21 years, because this was 2014, this award. And but I would come up fairly regularly because a lot of my friends were there, and we started having Limits reunions, like probably too frequently, to be honest with you, but it was really fun. We'd see the old gang. All our high school people who never moved away were there. We did the first Limits reunion we had done, which was the first time we had played in like 30 some years. There were 500 people that came throughout this club that night.
Nice.
It was amazing. But so in 2014, there's something called the Lehigh Valley Music Awards, and it's gotten, it's got a good reputation, and they do instrumentalists, vocalists, singers, all kinds of stuff. And, I get a call that, I'm being considered for the Lifetime Achievement Award.
It's connected to the Grammy Awards also, right?
Yes. The Lehigh Valley chapter. Yes.
Yeah.
They're tied in with the Philly chapter. I forgot that. Yeah. And so they had a ceremony. We brought the Limits on stage and played a few songs. And, because I get really emotional about it. I still do. And I'm sorry if I do, but, without those guys, and it just breaks my heart that Bo and Chris aren't here with us anymore, but without those guys in my first band, nothing would have happened in my life. None of the music would have happened. that's where I developed the love for it. That's where, excuse me.
It's okay, man.
That's why I always have a scarf. Well, if music, if it's not emotion, what is it? That's what music is. And
It's international, man.
So every time we'd get together, it was like, yeah, it was a pain in the ass. Yeah, we were okay. We weren't so good. But the feelings, the friendships that would, it's funny because just the other week, we did a box top show in Lancaster, Pennsylvania with Tommy James.
Right.
And Lancaster is very close to Allentown. Lancaster's the Amish, the Pennsylvania Dutch. Great, great area.
Great food.
Yeah. So about 8 or 10 of my Allentown high school people came to the show. And, it was a big task for them. They had to, buy the tickets, drive all the way over. And it was so great seeing them, and now we have another show in August coming up in Philadelphia. And I think we'll get a bunch of Lehigh Valley folks down there. But yes, that award was, that was something to me. It's always cool to be recognized.
You also have a passion for yoga and transcendental meditation. Talk about how you got involved with that, Rick.
Well, in the 60s, everybody heard about TM because the Beatles went to India. Mike Love was with them, and Donovan and
Maharishi, all of that.
I loved all the music. And of course, on college campuses, there was always posters for a TM lecture here, a TM lecture there, a TM. So I remember going to my first one in like 69, but I was too young, I wasn't ready, whatever, it didn't click. And then 72, was walking with my wife at the time. We saw a poster, went to the lecture, said, okay, this is cool, and started meditating, and I've been doing it now since 72. So it's 51 years, twice a day, I know people who've gone, changed this and changed diet and changed this. I know people who meditate and eat hamburgers every day, and it doesn't matter. You're not going into a religious thing. It's been a great experience, and real helpful for me. And into that led me into yoga because I've got back issues from being a drummer. Being a runner, and some leg nerve issues. So I've been doing yoga like 22 years. So yeah, it's I just like trying to stay in shape, and because traveling's pretty hard on you now. That's another thing.
It really is.
Traveling is not fun. No.
I have really been enjoying looking at your beautiful pottery and stuff online, Rick. And before we show some of your pottery, I've got this begs a question here, and I know you've probably never been asked this before, but it certainly needs to be addressed.
Go ahead.
There is a photo of two babes working on your pottery wheel.
Oh,
now,
yeah, I wish.
Were they teaching you, or were they taking you up on your offer for the first lesson to be free?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, first of all, it wasn't my pottery wheel, and they weren't my babes. But boy, I would have given them all the lessons they wanted.
Well, I was kind of hoping you were going to say they were, but anyway, all right.
And then everybody always asks about the movie Ghost.
Yeah.
Where Patrick Swayze had his arms around her and all that stuff. And
those were your ghosts?
Those are my ghosts. Sometimes I get that, but it's a great, I can't even call it a hobby now because I sell everything I make, which is nice,
Well, lift that piece of pottery up there that you were, there we go. I like that.
Yeah.
I like the neutral colors. Yeah, it's very cool.
And the glazes are very subtle. You can work with now. That's a small piece. I generally do bigger pieces, but I do bowls. I don't do like drinking mugs. I do bigger pieces, something like that, or a tall vase, or a big soup tureen, or something like that. And it's a lot of fun. And the other thing, keeps the hands really strong.
That's great, man.
For guitar. it works. It works back and forth with the guitar, just like, because I have friends saying, "Oh man, I got arthritis in my fingers." I mean, I got it in my back, but I don't have it in my fingers, thank God.
Well, how often are you throwing pots over there at your condo?
A couple times a week.
Nice.
That's about it. Yeah, and it's messy. So big part of the time it's cleaning up and make sure, because it is where I live. Ideally it would be nice to just have a studio space somewhere, and maybe, who knows, we'll see.
How far do you have to drive to get to the studio where you?
The main studio is 10 minutes away.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I take the pieces, pat them up real good so they don't break, take them over to the studio. We fire, we glaze, we do the final firing. Everything's done there. Yeah. So it's not far at all.
Why don't you tell everybody, Rick, how they can go about acquiring your beautiful work if they want to buy some?
Well, everything that I have is on my website.
Okay.
Which is ricklevy.com. We didn't talk much about this yet. I got a bug crawling up my wall. It's Florida. There you go. In 2018, Crossroad Press published my memoir, High in the Mid-60s. And it covers a lot of the things, but in more depth that we talked about.
The part I like is how to have a fabulous life in music without being famous.
Yeah, because, I can walk down the street just perfectly fine, and some of the people you work with can't. They're still getting bugged, and we're all grateful and lucky to still be playing. But my website, ricklevy.com, that has links to the book. I'm on Facebook. I'm very transparent. You just go to Rick Levy on Facebook. I think there's a doctor, but you'll know me. And that's how I sell my wares. I post new pieces as I make them, because I'm really finding it's nice selling them to music friends. People who know me through music, then they send me a picture of where they put it in their house, and it's cool. So I'll be probably in the next few weeks putting up a few new pieces up there. Yeah.
There's a young lady that saw. She's a Facebook friend. I'm trying to think of her last name. I think she lives in Las Vegas. I think her last name is Crab.
Tawana.
Tawana, yeah.
Tawana. Yeah. Oh, she's great. Yeah.
She really likes you, man. She had commented about that post that I put up about the show this Thursday, and she said, "Oh, I love Rick Levy."
So we know each other for a long time. Met through Tommy, and Tawana. It was actually one of the girls, one of the Hee Haw girls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, she's a beautiful woman, and I can't remember which Hee Haw girl she is, but and she was good friends with Tommy Rowe's wife and Tommy, and that's how we all met when we were playing. I guess when I was with Tommy at one of the venues in Vegas.
I think she had alluded to that in some previous conversations that we've had on Facebook.
Yeah, and then when I came back to Vegas with the Box Tops, she came to the show there, and we were very good friends with her brother, who passed away. He had PTSD. Really wonderful guy, and that's part of this thing too. And we didn't, it's like, I think you and I talked about it on the phone last week. I mean, sure, playing with the Box Tops. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's big audiences and, most of the time and stuff like that. But, playing a song like The Letter. Now, I know the feeling I get when I play it, when veterans come up, because that was such an important song during the Vietnam War. And I can only imagine the magnitude that Bill and Gary get from it, because they were there the first go round, when those the vets were still over in Vietnam and stuff but you get those special songs from the era, that are more than just a song, a top 40 song. The Letter, there's a reason it's an iconic, soundtrack of the 60s.
Yeah, I think when you talk to the generation today, like my kids, who are like, my son turns 40 tomorrow and my daughter is 38, soon to be 39. And when I told them who I was going to be interviewing next week, the Box Tops, they go, okay. They didn't know who that is.
No,
now,
they don't know.
They're both in the music industry somewhat. Our daughter is an accomplished cellist and has played in bands and played all over the world. Our son is a photographer for Getty, and in fact, he's leaving for Nashville tomorrow. He's in Dallas today. He lives in Austin, but he's going to be going over there for the CMA, the stuff going on.
Okay.
He's working in Old Red in Nashville tomorrow. He did it last year. A big job. He's there for 6 days. But
Oh, nice.
but what I was going to say is, when you talk to somebody in today's generation about the music that you and I grew up playing and loving, you get a different read on the music and how it sounds and why it's not as important to them as it was, say, the Vietnam vets or whatever.
You did it exactly right. And I've had this discussion with, educators. I'm a sociology major by training when I was back in college and everything.
Psychology here.
Okay, so I always, I'm always a people studier and all that. Now music is nothing more, and there's always exceptions, so don't jump all over me. But I mean, it's nothing more than an information choice that kids make. I'll listen to this while, then I'll do TikTok, then I'll do this, and of course, they've studied how short the attention spans have gotten.
Oh yeah,
30 seconds, 10 seconds. So music is nothing other than a passing, some little screech in the wind that's going by. The songs do not and will not have staying power of 60 years. When you hear, I'm Into Something Good by Herman's Hermits, well, that's been making money for 60 years, or Tommy's Dizzy, or Are the Letter, or, whatever it may be.
Right.
I think it really started to shift with streaming because music lost its value.
CD baby.
Yeah, all that music lost its value. People thought, we just traded for free. Now we did that too, but we had to go through the effort of making a CD. That took some effort. Now you can just push a button. So kids are growing up with the concept that music is free. So why should we pay to go see a concert?
Yeah,
it's
we've been fighting it for years.
Yeah, and I think it's listen, we're lucky this classic, what we call our classic music, is still there. It's going to be there for a while. How much longer, I don't know.
And I'm glad to say that there are quite a few friends of mine, but one that's very close to me, Terry Manning, and we've talked about Terry before. You all are Facebook friends. And when we were talking a couple of days ago about me working with Bill and Gary next week from the Box Tops, and I think the interpretation or what you feel when you hear a song that you've produced yourself. Of course, I think in the case of Terry, when he worked with the guys at Stax Records or Ardent, wherever it was,
right,
he was working with them after after the Letter.
Yeah.
But he was also involved with Cry Like a Baby, Neon Rainbow, and I'm sure the feeling that he gets when he hears those songs now is a little bit different than, say, my kids or somebody that's of a newer generation.
Oh my God, definitely,
because he helped create it. He helped create those tracks, and then he also lived the moment of Vietnam and all that, like we all did.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah. So there's this whole, again, sociological, psychological, emotional thing that's packaged with this period from 60 to 72, I'll say. Stretch it down into the late 50s when Elvis was first coming up, but right from there up to when rock and roll became stadium rock, what I call stadium rock. So the early 70s, there was this thing that we all owned. We could live it. Our dreams were part of it. Our losses were part of it. I mean, I'm not just saying this because believe me, what I'm saying, I think people who don't play and are but who are the real fans, they experience even more than we do for some reason, because, we're caught up in the technical end of it. How did they play it? How did they record it? But people who just listen to it, they are absolutely fitting it into their own mind frame. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The Letter is their song because, whatever. Sooner or later, the grassroots. That's my summer song because, this girl and I did it for the first time behind the sand dune, so it's like, it's really part of our life. It's not just this vibrations that are passing us by. And that is what I think is happening, with younger generations.
I think that defines the golden era of rock and roll with what you just said, because you have a feeling when you listen to those great songs. I think that's part of the element of why that music never grows old. It's our music, we lived it.
Yeah. And listen, artists are dying. They're getting too old to play. I think we're extremely fortunate that we have two of the founding members in the Box Tops.
You really are.
The Buckinghams have two of the guys, Carl and Nick. Of course, you have Peter News by himself and all that. But there are groups out there that, they've got the right to use the name through the family or the estate. And I used to have a real problem with that. But I don't anymore because, A, in most cases, they're doing a real good job of it. B, they're keeping it alive.
Well, see, and that's exactly what Ron Dante's doing, when he does
that's exactly what Ron's doing.
He's doing, not only does he do it for the Archies, which was all his, but
right.
he's doing it also for, these great cruises that everybody wants to hear those
he's one of the Turtles now.
He's one of the Turtles now, and
Yep. So you just got, it's just going to become more and more of a reality, plus then you have all the tribute bands, the ones that just go out as a bona fide, it's a funny oxymoron, but a bona fide tribute band. And some of them are just, miles ahead of what a lot of us do, because they use more technique, they use more technical stuff in their show. But they're good, man. They're, you hear,
Well, since you mentioned it, you said bona fide, and it automatically rang about the Bones.
Bones.
You got a guitar back there hanging up behind you. You want to go grab it and play a little something?
I'll grab
you got another one. Oh, excuse me. You're right there on top of it.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get, I probably have to plug this one in a little bit. Oh, yeah, this is, I don't know if y'all can see that.
Oh, that's cool.
That's for the people out there. That's a Dan Electro guitar. They were big in the 50s.
I was going to say, that's got some age on it.
Yeah.
But it looks like you just bought it.
They got a real cool sound to them. This.
Sounds good.
Yeah, man. So it's just goofing around. So yeah, all the songs are, and that's what the Bones do. Me and my partner Jeff Gans, he plays bass, and it's just the two of us in little restaurants and clubs in St. Augustine. When I'm home and stuff, and we do a few 50s, but all 60s stuff. A lot of one-hit wonders like the.
Yeah.
The Outsiders.
Yeah.
We'll do a power. Yeah.
Stepping Stone.
Yeah, Kick, Stepping Stone, Indian Reservation. We'll do a Paul Revere medley. We'll do Tommy J, because we do shows with Tommy, so we'll always do like My Baby Does That. We'll do blah, blah, blah.
How about any Cow Sills?
We don't do any Castles. It's probably too hard for us to do their songs.
Yeah.
We do some Hermits. We do some Tommy Rowe, some Elvis, some Johnny Cash, and it's just fun. When I'm noodling at home, I'm either like working on a song, because I like to songwrite, because I never know if the Limits will, if we'll decide to go back and do something again in the studio.
I hope so.
I would love to.
Such a good group, man.
And I've got on my phone, I probably have like 50 ideas of songs, so when I'm home, I'm doing that, or I revert back to the blues a lot. I love, Stuff like that. I could play that all day and night long.
Oh yeah.
And but yeah, it's, and it's not, like I said, looking out at palm trees out my window and being able to do this, I feel blessed, and I do not take it for granted. I'm really lucky, to do what I've loved to do for over 50 years, and still plan on doing, like I said, one morning, just find me with this thing in my hand and take it out of my hand and I'm gone. You know what I mean? But it's, it's, the way it is, Rick. It's like, we could always use more gigs. We could always have this more and more. And then you just stop and say, hey man, be grateful for it may not be our best year on the road, but hey, I'm going out this weekend. I got a great show coming up. So, that's right. If you got listeners in Fort Wayne, Indiana. What day
are you performing?
Saturday night. That would be the 10th of June.
Yep.
Does this air before the 10th of June?
It will be airing on Thursday,
okay.
2 days before. In fact, the 10th of June is my 51st wedding anniversary.
Oh, well, happy anniversary. That's great. If I can remember, I'll announce it from, it's at the Follinger Theater. It's us at the Box Tops, the Grassroots, and the Buckinghams. So have you made plans with Bill and Gary?
Not yet, because you had mentioned to go ahead and wait until they get back on the 12th.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it probably makes sense. But they're both up for it.
Yeah, we'll do it. I want to do it next week for next week's show. It'd be great.
That'd be great.
In fact, I've already got an outline, so I'm looking forward to working with the guys and everything.
Nice.
Well, Rick, I have to say, man, you are definitely one of the most lucky people that have made your love, your life, and your vocation. Well done, my friend. I really appreciate you taking this little piece of time to share with us on Talking Rock Radio.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Let's stay in touch, man. I mean, you're one of my new friends. We don't have to just do a show.
Yeah. Now you're where in El Paso, right?
Yeah, we're in El Paso, man, where Texas doesn't want us and New Mexico doesn't want us either, So
yeah, we're the other side. We're coming down in September, but it's far away. It's in near San Antonio. New Braunfels.
Yeah, at the Brontex,
Yeah, great theater.
It's a beautiful theater. I've got friends that have played there, and it's a nice place.
Well, what happened with us? We played there in March of 2020, just as COVID was really coming on. We played, the show was about 95% sold out. Some people were wearing masks, but remember at that time there was the everybody was hoarding toilet paper.
Oh yes.
Okay. So I guess I shouldn't have done it because it wasn't politically correct, but I went backstage and got like 6 rolls of toilet paper and threw it out to the audience. I said, here, don't say the box office never gave you something. So then the next night we were supposed to go to Houston to Do-Si-Do. And I get a call at 5 a.m. in the hotel. Do-Si-Do's closed. The county's shut down. Everything's shut down because of COVID. We were lucky to get home. We were lucky to get flights home. It was crazy. And then we didn't work. Nobody worked for a year and a half. So
yeah, it's changed a lot of lives, Rick. Nice thing about where you're going to be too is Bluebell Ice Cream is nearby.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Yeah, and they got some cool wineries there too.
Yeah, so I know I emailed a couple of places in El Paso for like a Rudy. I figured, hey, if we're in Texas, we should get another show while we're down there. Doesn't matter how far it is. So I know there's a couple theaters and stuff like that.
There are.
I'll check.
In fact, Leland Sklar, if you know him, everybody knows Leland. He just got through doing the Lyle Lovett show while he was here. In fact, I spent about 8 hours with him while he was here, and we had a blast. And the show was great. He got me tickets for the show, and he's getting ready to launch out. In fact, right now he's back out on the road with the big band. I think there's like 16 of them.
With Lyle Lovett.
With Lyle Lovett. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think he and I have the same birthday, as a matter of fact.
Well, Bill, that I'm getting ready to interview next week, he and I are born 4 days apart. I was born on the 19th of January, and he's on the
23rd, I think.
and he's on the 23rd. Yeah, same year. Yeah.
So anyway, good. So yeah, great. Anytime you want to do it again, or go deeper, whatever, that'd be great. I had fun.
Sounds cool, my friend. Send me a ticket for an airplane.
Okay, I'm out of here. Got to walk my dog.
See you, buddy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.